Every goddamn time, man.
Hello. I think we have things set up.
More or less.
Perfect.
Yeah, stream should be going. I don't know if I have Discord audio. Uh,
Oh shoot, the battle's already starting.
yeah, I'm aware.
Well, in the off chance they can hear us, welcome back everyone. We are witnessing the final battle, at least for Snorlex and PixelmonFR here. As always, I'm your commentator Delta. It looks like things are starting off to be very interesting. We have, I believe, this is Declan's top Rafini. As Smart immediately pivots out of Deoncy into the Galarian Slowking.
All right, hold on. I'm just
This
quickly checking the. Can you speak? Checking the. Can you speak? Checking the. Can you speak?
and things are immediately at an interesting situation at this point. As
Oh
we
no.
are, I believe, waiting for each of them to make their play.
Okay.
Tough, uh, this is a tough match for both teams, as I do believe both of them are fairly high in the rankings right now.
I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but we are at the stage now where every fight counts, and the team is really points as they can in these last couple, as it may make the difference in qualifying. And I do hope I'm unmuted. I am okay.
There we go, pivoting out to Heatran. And it looks like Chilly Reception is coming back out, allowing Declan, or sorry, rather allowing Smart to pivot out. I will say I'm a little bit under the weather right now, so if my voice is a little bit off, I do apologize.
That Heatran is running air balloon, so whatever switches in here doesn't necessarily have the capability of out this heat.
While that's true, keep in mind, Air Balloon is one of the more exploitable items to handle. Ingram's
As the
Urshifu,
Urshifu
once
comes
again,
out, this Heatran will be threatened out. Um, Either surging strikes or a close combat here will put it down. And in fact, there's a good chance we may just see a straight up U-turn here for the Urshifu if it's running. As either way, it's advantageous both ways. As if the Heatran stays in, it pops the balloon and allows something else to come in. And if they switch out the Heatran, it allows them to pivot and bring something else in that is more able to handle whatever swapped to. But we may also just see them double down and go straight for something that can immediately threaten this Heatran. Heatran will switch out, and the Rillaboom does come out, and the Urshifu does go for the U-turn, which actually hurts that Rillaboom quite a lot. Bringing it under half.
while that's true, keep in mind, Rillaboom is able to recover a fair amount thanks to grassy terrain. And for all we know, although this could be the choice band set, I have seen some Rillaboom run Drain Punch in the past. Of course, we still have to determine what on earth they go for, as I'm not entirely certain if Heatran is entirely safe here.
I
Of course, something to keep in mind is that we've not even seen Heatran from Smart's side yet. I believe the only ones we've seen are Slowking, which is fairly susceptible to a knockoff, and Mega Deoxys as well.
see if I can pause the that stream still going. Really check the current standing of these two teams, to see where they
Zapdos.
lie. Currently, PixelmonFR. It is PixelmonFR versus Snorlex. Who it is? Who it is? Yeah, that's exactly who it is. It's PixelmonFR versus Snorlex. Currently, PixelmonFR is in 5th place overall in the standings, with +4 overall. They're looking very healthy. Even if they lose all 3 of these games, they'll still be in a very good spot. Snorlex, however, is very, very low on the standings. They are currently second last overall, not having won a single match so far. Theoretically, depending on how other teams perform, they could get into the top 16 if they win all 3 of these matches, and other teams later in the group stage, in this part of the group stages, perform badly. Snorlax maybe has a chance of squeaking by, but they'll have to perform the best they absolutely can. They cannot afford to lose a single match here.
It looks like Zapdos pivoting in, trying its best to Volt Switch out. As it looks, as Landorus comes in to negate it, in comes Hidden Power Ice though to deal significant damage. As Landorus is able to successfully set up rocks. And this is interesting. As if I really if memory serves, Volt Switch is usually used on more defensive sets, but Hidden Power Ice is usually a more offensive move, correct?
Yeah, this might be somewhat of a hybrid. Although to be fair, usually the offensive sets are usually just in range, which isn't necessarily required. As normally that's Thunder, Weather Ball, Hurricane Roost. Whereas usually when not in rain, it usually runs a more utility based or defensive set. It's used for more pivoting. This may be an offensive set that's not intended to be used in rain, which may allow for Volt Switch to be useful, especially if it has a higher speed stat. Or at least investment in speed. The Darkrai comes in. As the Zapdos actually misses the Hurricane on the Darkrai, that would have hurt that Darkrai a lot. It's not known for its defensive capabilities, but unfortunately it does miss. The Darkrai comes in safely. An Ice Beam probably actually won't kill Zapdos here, depending on its investment. Non-stab Ice Beam. But the Zapdos certainly doesn't want to stay in. It can't really
going for Z Hypnosis and missing, unfortunately, as Darkrai goes for the Volt Switch. I imagine now Rillaboom might want to come in to attempt to out-prioritize it.
I think
and chances are, I think we're looking at either Rillaboom or Urshifu here, trying to counter the Darkrai. But
I think
I would imagine.
Sorry, you can go. I think this Zapdos may very well be on perhaps a bit more on the defensive side due to the fact that they just stayed in there, willingly taking what was likely going to be an Ice Beam. Diancie does come in. It'll be slower. While the Mega Diancie is fast, it doesn't quite matter. This Darkrai is up on speed.
I'm not certain if that will matter much, though, as Darkrai cannot set up here without taking a Moonblast and very much being knocked out. And I would imagine, even if it attempts to go for Hypnosis, Mega Diancie is very much capable of magic bouncing that away.
And I don't quite think this Darkrai has the stopping power, even with a Focus Blast or something. probably not running due to the fact that it has Z Hypnosis. It's probably Hypnosis Nasty Plot Ice Beam Dark Pulse set, in which it can't really threaten a lot of damage on this tendency.
I will mention that oftentimes the Nasty Plot set with Hypnosis does run Sludge Bomb. However, partly thanks to the rock typing, it's not super effective. We'll have to see what exactly Darkrai can do here as Tapu Fini comes out. Critical hit. Oh wow, that's actually very good
Ooh.
for that's very good for Smart here.
Tapu Fini usually wouldn't be threatened that much by a Diancie, but Mega Diancie, but taking that critical hit is quite unfortunate, as it now does put it where I think I'm not entirely sure if another Moonblast is a guaranteed kill. I think it's a roll, but either way, this Tapu Fini is not safe.
Something to keep in mind is that most Tapu Fini are physically invested and not specially. Oh, that's actually interesting. Apologies for the slight delay. I was blowing my nose. But it looks like Moonblast does take out the Tapu Fini here.
Deciding to stay in. Perhaps they don't have anything better to switch in on, not wanting to. Or perhaps they were just really, really hoping that if it was a roll would go in their favor. The Rillaboom does come in. Giantsy out.
Mhm. Something to keep in mind is that Deontay is still surprisingly bulky, even though I think its defense is lower, right? Like, I think it trades offensive firepower for and speed for bulk.
Let me check. It is still fairly bulky, at least in the defenses, but its HP stat is still quite low at base 50. It does have 110 in both defense and special defense. That's a
That is
far
true.
cry from its 150 in both when it's on Mega.
There we go. In comes Deontay to read the Zapdos. A very good read on Declan's part. And I do think there's a very high likelihood that I don't think there's anything Zapdos runs that can be able to threaten Deontay here.
Not without
Meaning
rain,
there's a
no.
very likely pivot coming out. I would imagine that
Well,
even though he
maybe not, because a Mega Diancie is faster than Zapdos. So I don't know if it will just pivot out. It may switch. As a Zapdos certainly does not want to take a Diamond Storm. Mega Diancie.
well, it looks like we're fighting that out right now. Diamond Storm coming
Ooh.
out, taking significant damage on the Zapdos here. I do think although it is boots, I don't think it can safely switch back in unless it's against a ground type. I will say something to keep in mind though is that Air balloon is still a factor. If it did hard switch into something like Heatran, Heatran had a very high likelihood of being KO'd.
The damage on that Zapdos isn't necessarily purple. There's a very good chance it's running Roost, not guaranteed. The Urshifu does come in, does threaten very high damage on this Diancie. Probably enough to kill, actually, with the current health value.
The question is, does it just U-turn yet again?
Very well could. You see, unfortunately, Tapu Fini, would be a fantastic thing to switch into this Diancie, but that's not happening. Never mind. I'm getting the team up. It's the other person. They're both running Mega Diancie. Um, I think it's the person that has the Mega Diancie that had the Tapu Fini that died.
I can confirm that's the case. I would imagine we know from earlier that Rillaboom is not safe. If it goes for another U-turn, that Rillaboom is gone.
I think it only got a single grassy terrain.
There we go. Going
Goes
for
for the
Aqua
Aqua
Jet,
Jet.
enough to KO the Deontay even from that range, which is kind of surprising.
I guess just really wanting to get that kill. I do believe Mega Diancie does outspeed Urshifu, and a Moonblast would hurt it a lot. I guess that's why the Diancie stayed in, as the
Could it
Rillaboom does come out.
potentially be choice band? I'm wondering, because oftentimes I don't think I've even seen Scarf Urshifu run Aqua Jet. I will say Grassy Glide will threaten a KO here on Urshifu,
And this time it
meaning
cannot just use out. Also, this that will mean that this Rillaboom will get at least one more turn, which may bring it just into range where it could survive another or that was to happen again.
that certainly is true. The question still remains: what does the Urshifu do in this situation? Do they try and get a little more damage out with Aqua Jet, or do they just hard switch out? Of course, for all we know, this could just be protective pads. There we go. In
Ooh.
comes Zapdos. Oh,
Rillaboom going for the fake out and hits the Zapdos with the fake out and does proc static. That may hurt it quite a bit as its reliability has just plummeted. And in any engagement where it wants to use something other than Grassy Glide, it is not going to be faster unless it is something that is very slow. But I don't believe the opposing side has anything that would be slow enough for the Rillaboom to outspeed now.
keep in mind though, while Grassy Glide is still in fact an option, um, and Fake Out as well, it's not always going to work. In comes Landorus to further neuter any kind of potential from this Rillaboom, and I do think now, uh, I don't think Grassy Terrain plus Grassy Glide will be KOing Landorus. And of course, Landorus very much will threaten from this range with a U-turn.
We'll switch
There we
out
go.
as
Into
Heatran
T-Ran.
comes in. Landorus taking that turn, knowing it has the advantage, and going dog. And that Heatran's air balloon is still up. Meaning it can at least stay one turn in against this Landorus, but I expect a U-turn is all but guaranteed from this Landorus this turn, as it will pop that air balloon and potentially bring in something more advantageous, as well as preventing that Rillaboom from switching back in comfortably.
Something to keep in mind, I do believe Urshifu is still alive. Actually, choosing the hard pivot into the Urshifu here,
Perhaps it's not
as
running
we
U-turn.
finally get some chip damage in.
Urshifu is trapped by Magma Storm, but that doesn't matter too much, as there's not that much that this Heatran can do to threaten this Urshifu. It will threaten this Heatran whether it presses Aqua Jet, Surging Strikes, or Close Combat here. A just turn, choose to press U-turn again, which would heavily damage, potentially kill that Rillaboom if it decides to switch in.
Of course, the question still remains: what will actually happen here? In comes the Landorus as Surging Strikes comes out and uh KOs the Landorus here. Of course, unfortunately, I think it only hit once. In comes Rillaboom to threaten it back out. However, if Grassy Glide fails, there we go. In comes the Landorus once again. Grassy Glide dealing fairly significant damage here. It might be enough to KO once again.
It actually probably would have been better if they went for fake out there, as a fake out into Grassy Glide would have hurt significantly more. As the Landorus does U-turn as the Heatran comes in, popping that air balloon. This Heatran is now finally vulnerable to both the opposing side's Mega Diancie and Landorus.
In comes Urshifu threatening out the in comes Urshifu once again threatening the Heatran here. I would imagine a close combat is able to KO from this range, right?
Almost certainly, yeah. Heatrans are usually specially defensive invested. They can sometimes be physically defensive, but most of the time they're specially defensive. As the Darkrai comes in, taking the close combat and dying, the Rillaboom will come in, threatening the Urshifu back out. Now remember, this Landorus can still switch in, but it's going to take quite a chunk for its troubles. And it is now in range of being killed by another Grassy Glide. However, that is given the circumstances that this Rillaboom doesn't get paralyzed. And it does get paralyzed, as the Landorus goes for a U-turn, and it's actually a crit. Only just not killing the Rillaboom. And I expect as the Slowking comes in, I expected the choice banded, the Aqua Jet Urshifu to come back in. No, the Slowking comes in, knowing that this Rillaboom cannot really threaten it.
That is true, as although Rillaboom with a choice band is enough to KO, if this Rillaboom is choice locked, Grassy Glide here will be dealing, frankly, negligible damage.
And grassy terrain is gone. So, if that Urshifu was to come on field and was to be able to do so safely, the Rillaboom would not be able to do much about it. It's hard switch out.
Heatran as Slowking goes for Future Sight. This is potentially looking a little more dangerous, as with Darkrai gone, there's nothing that can come in and take the Future Sight. Magma Storm comes out and there we go, chilling reception, allowing it to pivot away, likely into the Urshifu here once again.
A close combat here almost certainly kills this Heatran, and the Rillaboom certainly cannot switch into it, as it is at a minuscule amount of health, and even an Aqua Jet would kill it at the rate it's currently.
While that is true, something to keep in mind is that a choice must be made. Even if sacking the Heatran here is an option, something to consider is there we go. Sacking the Heatran to prevent Future Sight from dealing any damage. And now we're left with a choice. Do you stay in and predict a knockoff, or do you pivot to Slowking? Rillaboom going for Grassy Glide, once again dealing negligible damage. Is this potentially the final Pokemon? I don't believe
It is
so.
indeed.
Actually, it looks like it is. Choosing to go out on his own terms, Declan does a little bit more damage to Smart Pets. And with 5-0, it looks like PixelmonFR will be moving on to the next round.
That is very, very bad for Snorlex. They need every single point they can get, and losing that fight might already have put them out of the tournament. But I'm unsure. They may still have a chance. Either way, they will have to fight their absolute hardest. As our next fighters are coming forward. And I don't know who belongs to either team because neither of them have their teams in their names.
I do believe Zenter is representing PixelmonFR based on what I've seen from prior rounds. And this is interesting as we are seeing the manager of Snorlex themselves coming out, potentially trying their best to redeem their team here. We'll have to see whether or not that will be able to pull through.
Certainly need it, as although I'm fairly sure they don't have a chance of qualifying anymore, unfortunately. I may be wrong. However, if I am wrong, then they need to win these next two matches. If they lose either of these next two matches, I am certain that they will no longer be able to qualify. So they need to fight their absolute hardest. It does not surprise me that their manager has come out now. And also, with that victory under their belts, PixelmonFR has basically guaranteed themselves a spot. I don't think it's possible for them to be pushed out of the qualifying anymore.
There we go. It looks like the match is beginning. We are seeing a Grimmsnarl once again. This is very much potentially a hyper offense team we're seeing.
And the tried and true Landorus T on the opposite side. This Landorus will probably not be able to threaten this Grimmsnarl much. It will likely be able to set up both screens. Oh, the Landorus does go for the taunt, meaning Grimmsnarl could only set up that first screen, which is Reflect. And depending on what set this Grimmsnarl is running, if it's running the full status move set, it will have to hard switch here, as it may not have a single option to do otherwise. That Landorus having using taunt there is quite big, as it has really prevented that Grimmsnarl from doing all that it wants to do. We will be having a restart though, as unfortunately one of the players only selected one of their Pokemon. So players are just quickly restarting and to have the same leads and the same moves coming out.
Now this is going to be interesting as I think we've only seen turn one here. Reflect raising Snarl's defense as Landorus goes for taunt. We'll have to see what actually happens in this situation, as I think this was the furthest the last round got to.
Yes, I believe that I'm assuming Winter Coyote is going for a hard switch here, and only when they went to hard switch to something they realized
There
they
we
couldn't.
go.
As the Corviknight comes in, Landorus does get to set up rocks, and interestingly, with this Corviknight coming in, although Landorus can't really do much to a Corviknight can't really do much to a Landorus either. This Corviknight can, of course,
something to
defog.
keep in mind is that Landorus, because this Landorus has taunt, I would imagine defog is not quite a possibility.
Does
There we
go
go.
for the taunt.
As Corviknight goes for the U-turn.
Perhaps just trying to bring something safely in, so you know they don't find an earthquake. But that could have been very risky, as depending on what this Corviknight is running, if they got knocked off by this Landorus, that could have been very bad. As for example, this is a Corviknight that's explicitly there just for defogging. Then if it's running boots, it's going to struggle to do that later and later into the match, as the opposing Landorus does come in.
Now this is interesting. We are seeing both Landorus and the you're also seeing Corviknight. Is this potentially an offensive variant?
Could be, we'll have to see. Either way, it goes for the psychic. Huh? I didn't even know it got that.
More oftentimes, this might potentially be run on a. Oftentimes, it's usually used on the other set, the Landorus Incarnate. But yeah, Psychic is certainly a unique choice.
Very unique, because Landorus T has a a attack stat that is considerably higher than its special attack stat. I'm a bit baffled. I'm gonna be honest. Really makes me curious as to what set this Landorus is running. Its EV spreads, the other moves, the item, everything. I have no idea what this could be.
There we go.
Opposing
In comes Corviknight once again.
These two teams looking like they're mirroring each other almost. Well, certainly not, seeing as this Landorus is running Psychic, and I would bet money that the other Landorus is not. If this is running Psychic, then this is likely a offensive focused Landorus. Potentially running Rock Slide, but at the same time it's running Psychic, so maybe it's specially invested. I don't know.
I will say, keep in mind, I have seen all kinds of offensive sets. I think one of the more optimal sets right now in Gen 9 OU is Earth Power and Grass Knot. Of course, Corviknight is being pressured here.
I'm baffled. I'm used to seeing offensive Landorus is running stuff like Swords Dance and Explosion, or like Flyanium Z or like Zed Fly or Zed Stone Edge or what have you. Not let's go for the U-turn. So this might be a mixed Landorus. I don't know. Also, as it does hit that Corviknight, that does mean the is not running rock boots. Goes for bulk up. likely meaning that it's not running the Iron Press set and probably running Body Press and Brave Bird, as the Grimmsnarl does come back in, potentially able to just re-put up its other screen to as the Corviknight goes for me being right does get leftovers regeneration. It's not running boots, it's not running groggy helmet, leftovers. As the Grimmsnarl uses Reflect, but Reflect is still up from earlier, allowing this Corviknight to just for free use another bulk up.
Could we potentially see a sweep here? It might be possible depending on the team. Uh, Very confident on Zenter's end, I believe.
I guess the hope is that as the Armor Rouge does come out,
Agility?
this is a setup sweeper Corviknight. With that agility, and it is now two bulk ups in. It is going to be quite the monster. It's going to outspeed basically anything that isn't scarfed or energy boosted. Energy boosted, booster energied. Um, it's this may very well be a sweep from here.
It depends, as I do believe both of Corviknight's offensive moves are contact, and if this Armor Rouge is potentially running indoor, I could potentially see it outspeeding here and then threatening a KO with Armor Cannon. We very much have to see what happens. The Stealth Rock very much hurting its chances if it is running Focus Sash. There we
Going
go.
for
It goes
power trip.
Surprisingly, still not enough to KO, which is kind of impressive.
I will go
With
down.
this policy has proc, and so has weak armor. I do think priority would be enough to KO there we go. Actually, we had reflect. That reflect actually came in clutch.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
However, with that power trip, this Armor Rouge is very much set up for success here. The question remains, is there any priority available that could stop this Armor Rouge? Because if not, it would have to rely on either a booster or a choice scarf. And I do believe in most circumstances, an Armor Rouge with double speed is going to be very hard to outpace. There we go. Yeah, I have confirmation on the exact speed tier. I'm not going to mention it for the sake of competitive safety. There we
Rillaboom
go.
does
In
come
comes
out.
Rillaboom.
Does have priority. Will push that Armor Rouge out the battlefield, and also will mean that will also mean that if this Armor Rouge does come back in, frankly, it will be crippled and
Here
will
comes
not be able to do what
Endure.
it wants to do.
As
For the
Rillaboom
Grassy
goes
Glide.
for Grassy Glide once again.
It doesn't matter how many times you proc weak armor, that Grassy Glide is still going to hit first.
Armor Rouge restoring a little bit of health. However, I don't think that's going to quite matter when Armor Rouge is currently at half defense. It is fortunate that you were able to stop a potential sweep from Corviknight here. That much is true. However, I don't think this Armor Rouge has much longer, as I do believe Endure is very similar to Protect, where the chance of it will fail over time.
It's first turn is guaranteed, second turn is I think it's 50-50, third turn is even less, and fourth turn it will automatically fail. I believe you're misremembering that though. Either way, you're not stalling through this grassy terrain. It may just well be worth sacrificing the Armor Rouge here, as frankly, if it does switch out into something else, one, something else is going to be taking that damage, and two, this Armor Rouge is kind of useless. Does just decide to take true. Taking the Grassy Glide, which is the crit, not that it matters, which will put that Armor Rouge down. A potential setup sweeper on both sides now going down.
Out comes Grimmsnarl once again. However, I do think in most circumstances, Rillaboom is still faster.
We'll switch into that Manaphy. Depending on what this Grimmsnarl is running, if the Grimmsnarl is not running Taunt, then this Manaphy will just be able to set up Tail Glow possibly 2 times for free. This Grimmsnarl is running Taunt though, however, this Manaphy will probably not be able to get that off. So just go for the light screen, not going for the taunt. Either it doesn't have it or it's not going for it, as the Manaphy goes for the Take Heart, increasing its speed.
Now that's actually a little interesting, as I think, at least with Fion, it has very different properties, raising its special attack and special defense.
The main problem with Manaphy, and one of the reasons that it's not as strong as it really can be, is its speed tier stuck at 100. It's okay, but for a hyper offensive Pokemon, it's really not as high as it wants to be. So that speed boost is going to be very, very strong. As the Grimmsnarl does go for the parting shot, allowing this Ferrothorn to come in and will likely threaten this Manaphy with a Power Whip. Manaphy goes for Acid Armor. What are we seeing? This is some of the weirdest sets I've seen today. Psychic Landorus, the Agility Bulk Up Corviknight, the Take Heart Acid Armor Manaphy. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Actually, this is kind of interesting. Why did speed increase for Manaphy? As I do believe normally it would, in fact, be running special attack and special defense. This is interesting.
I can only assume that it's a specific quirk with how Take Heart has been set up in Pixelmon, as Take Heart is a Pokemon Legends Arceus move. If I'm going for the knockoff, knocking off those leftovers from Manaphy. Ferrothorn isn't running Power Whip, as the Manaphy goes for the stored power, it doesn't do much.
Gyro Ball dealing negligible damage here, as Ferrothorn continues to drain health. I will say, I think the light screen is allowing negligible damage to be dealt to this Ferrothorn, as Ferrothorn goes for Seed Bomb of all things.
Seed Bomb is more reliable than Power Whip, but of course it's have less damage, and Ferrothorn usually not being attack invested does usually mean Power Whip's the better choice, even if it's less reliable. And if you're just repeatedly going for Scolds, even though it's doing little to no damage, Earthworm going for knockoff again, not going for a seed bomb, as the reflect will now wear off. I don't know what's going on, man.
You
The
gotta give it to these
Grimmsnarl
trainers,
comes
though.
out.
They are using some very fun move sets. I'll give them that much.
Manaphy will die to it will die to leech seed damage as the light screen finally wears off. Too little, too late. Not that stored power was doing that much damage anyway, but
Could it potentially have been bugged, maybe?
I don't think so. I think it's just hitting Ferrothorn with a move it resists behind light screen. It didn't have any special attack boosts or anything. It was only plus defense and plus speed. So I think it was doing the damage it was intended to do. So Cresselia does come out.
Now, this is interesting. Cresselia is more often used as a trick room setter. So what is going to happen here?
Goes for
Cresselia
Calm
going for the
Mind.
Calm Mind sweep instead.
Are they just using 6 setup sweepers?
Potentially. Which is a very bold strategy, because at any point, anything faster, at least immediately faster, could it just straight up immediately KO them?
To the person in chat, I do not believe it is at +6. I believe that was at +4. Because I believe Take Heart only increases the speed by 1 stage. Yeah, it was only by 1 stage. It was only at +4. And it was behind a light screen. And we don't know what the investment of that Ferrothorn is. Both of these teams are using very, very weird things that are not common at all. So
There we go. Ferrothorn coming out once again.
this very well could be specially defensive invested, as the Cresselia goes for another Calm Mind. I think it is mostly setup sweepers on PixelmonFR's side.
I will say something to keep in mind. Setup sweepers are very prone to status, as well as being immediately outsped and KO'd. We'll have to see here what actually comes through.
Calm Mind.
As Ferrothorn goes for knockout, dealing pretty substantial damage as Grassy Seed is removed.
The Moonlight does heal all of that back, and also that does mean that Knockoff will not be able to out damage the Moonlight, as it's done its bonus damage from knocking off the item. It's going to be doing less damage that now, and even with that bonus damage, it wasn't enough to do more than 50%. Earthworm does go for the Leech Seed. Cresselia just keeps setting up and setting up, hoping to break through this Ferrothorn with sheer force of will.
While that's certainly true, something to keep in mind is that with its resistance, Gyro Ball coming out dealing significant damage, this Cresselia may be forced to Moonlight until it runs out of power points.
The person in chat, Take Heart is a move from Pokemon Legends Arceus, which means it has not been updated since its initial edition. To have its most recent effect. The old Legends Arceus effect was just that it boosts offensive stats, and I think the Pixelmon dev teams has rationalized that as just boosting its speed.
Trust me, I feel the same way, but I am just as confused as you are. There you go, stored power, threatening a fair amount of damage here. Ingram's knockoff dealing a little bit more damage.
So it will just be able to Moonlight through the damage it's taking.
Ferrothorn's light screen has worn off, making it take significantly more damage. However, I do think this Cresselia is potentially still forced to Moonlight here, as I don't think it is a solid opportunity for it to Cresselia moonlighting once again as Ferrothorn goes for. Are we looking at a knockoff or are we looking at Gyro Ball potentially? Knockoff once again.
I'm going to assume that Spherethorn must be specially defense invested. Just gonna run the calcs. Hold on. I'm still like this match is like it gobsmacked me. I'm gonna assume that Cresselia's max special attack. This is a Ferrothorn, especially defensive. We are at. Are we max now or +4? How many combines have been used? Were you counting? I sure as hell wasn't.
I do imagine in this situation, although Cresselia is slowly restoring its HP back, unless Ferrothorn here is out of Gyro Balls, ooh, a decent amount of damage has been dealt. I think potentially choosing to sack Cresselia here to get some permanent damage.
Okay, I just ran the calcs. If that is a specially defensive Ferrothorn, that is taking the damages.
There we go. Out comes the Como, immediately threatening the very much immediately threatening this this is gonna be interesting.
Also of note, Komodo, often known for being either a wall breaker or a setup sweeper.
Going for Boom Burst here, a very good read on Zenter's part. As I do think if it attempted to go for the Z crystal now, this is gonna be interesting setup as long as Grimmsnarl is here on the field, I don't quite think it can go for the setup. However, I do imagine Grimmsnarl here is significantly faster. Going for the parting shot, I don't think it'll be able to survive the next Stealth Rock.
Yeah, I just ran the calcs. The damage on the Manaphy was correct as well.
Oh, actually, I could be wrong. I do think Grimmsnarl barely survives this next one. In comes Landorus once again as Como goes for Boom Burst, still dealing very respectable damage. This is potentially choice specs.
What could be. Yeah, so with the Manaphy did not have any special attack boost. It was +2 from speed and +2 from defense, making +4 overall, and a +4 stored power behind light screen only does 5% to especially defensive Ferrothorn. Oh, +4, right? It does 6% to especially defensive Ferrothorn. Not much more.
Psychic coming in!
I forgot about the psychic. Is a crit. I don't think that would have been enough to kill without the crit, actually. This is one of the weirdest matches I think I've ever watched.
I will say, though that is the case, it's certainly one of the closer matches. Psychic critical hitting the Landers here might have made a difference. Although, of course, as you said earlier, it's not entirely sure whether or not that actually is true.
It may have mattered, but I don't know. I think that's I think I don't know is just that's how I feel about this match. The
Very
Kamo
much
comes
so.
back out.
I do think in most circumstances Landers is faster. We'll have to see how much damage this Psychic does. If it's enough to KO,
It's not.
there we go.
That's hurt, but it's not
Dealing
enough.
fairly respectable damage. Are we finally getting to see the Z Crystal? There we go.
Yep, it
We
is
are
another setup sweeper. This is a full team of setup sweepers.
There we go. Out comes Grimmsnarl. Taking a little bit less. I do think potentially Zenter will be able to complete the sweep from here.
So as with even with a parting shot, I don't think it's gonna be enough.
Ferrothorn hurt by Stealth Rock. We'll have to see what Como goes for here. Boomers could be dealing a good amount of damage, but Boomers comes out dealing frankly negligible damage here. However, I do think Como is often a mixed attacker, and in comes Flamethrower to immediately KO the Ferrothorn. I think this might just be a complete sweep. Ooh, this is interesting. Urshifu coming out and setting up Urshifu hurt by Stealth Rock. However, I don't know if it'll survive a +1, especially from a Boom Burst. We'll have to see whether or not that actually is true. Okay, out comes the Como. In comes the Rillaboom as Urshifu goes for close combat, dealing significant damage against the Rillaboom here. However, I do think it is now threatened out.
Also, even if it wasn't, I think this might be one of the last Pokemon on Winter Coyote's team. Even if it did live against this Rillaboom, which won't, that defensive decrease will now mean it's in range kill. So as the Grimmsnarl comes in, as the Rillaboom actually goes for the U-turn, but it can't because the Grimmsnarl goes because the Grimmsnarl actually dies from Stealth Rock. I think this is it for Winter Coyote here. I don't think they have anything that can get through this Rillaboom and Kamoo. I might be wrong.
In comes the Corviknight. I do believe
It might have a chance.
Rillaboom comes out.
A Brave Bird on this Komodo would hurt a lot. Corviknight goes for the Iron Defense. I don't know if this Komodo can actually break through this Corviknight, especially if it has Roost.
Well, something to keep in mind, this is the specially offensive set. We saw it had a flamethrower earlier. That's how it was able to KO the.
Oh,
I would imagine, depending on the situation, though, if Komodo does attempt to go for flamethrower, Urshifu
yeah,
Rapid
the
Strike
Urshifu
will be
could
able
come
to
in,
come
yeah.
back in and go for a close combat, immediately either KOing the Rillaboom or the Komodo. And I would imagine in either situation,
Let's go for the flamethrower. The Corviknight does actually live. It goes for the body press and does kill the Komodo. Question is this Corviknight in range of being killed by this Rillaboom? It is a +2 defense, and although it has very low health, it is a 4 times resist to Grassy Glide. Goes for the knockoff. It only just lives.
and in a surprising turn
Goes
of
for the
fortune, there we go. We have
roost.
the roost.
That might be it. I think Winter Coyote might have just squeezed victory in, as the Rillaboom will now be unable to break through this Corviknight. So he goes for the body press, and Winter Coyote will win that match with 2 Pokemon remaining. What a match! As Snorlex gets their first victory, a very, very important one, and a very, very weird one.
Very interesting set we've actually seen from both of them. I think that's the first time I've ever seen fully specially offensive Komo, and quite a lot of strange sets from either team. I think that's the first time I've even seen a take heart.
That specially defense. The thing is that most of the setup sweepers, um, on the side of PixelmonFR were especially offensive. And most of them were stored power users, which just allowed that Ferrothorn, which resists stored power and was a specially defensive Ferrothorn, to just sit in the way and not care. And it also helped that it was behind light screens for most of the times it was out. So I don't know what to say. That was crazy.
And so begins, I believe, the final match between both of these trainers, and very much potentially the final match for Snorlex. We'll have to see if Drafron will be able to upset once again by defeating Gato. It looks like the match is about to start. There we go. It looks like the match is once again beginning. We are witnessing Gato's team here with the Lopunny. And this is interesting. There we go. In comes the Lopunny. We get confirmation now that this is Rocky Helmet Alomomola, proving that it is arguably one of the most overpowered defensive bonds. Once again. And there we go. Zapdos coming out with Rocky Helmet once again, dealing a little bit of extra chip damage. As Galarian Slowking comes out. I think we might have potentially seen our main defensive core. Of course, we don't really know for certain whether or not this actually has a it's a bit hard to tell for sure whether or not this is full stall or not. I don't believe that is the case quite at the moment. And so we are left with a very difficult choice. The question still remains, though. This is going to be a tough choice to make. Going for the future sight here as Jirachi comes out. Jirachi going for the body slam here as Landorus successfully paralyzes. This is going to be interesting. Out comes the Zapdos once again as Landorus goes for the Stealth Rock. There we go, actually Slowking coming out as Zapdos goes for the Roost. Slowking once again going for Future Sight. And so we're left with a tough choice here. Stealth Rock coming out and hurting Jirachi just a little more as Galarian Sloping chooses the Chilly Reception. This could be potentially a very long drawn out game here. We'll have to see for ourselves whether or not that actually holds weight. Jirachi, now this could be interesting as Darkrai comes out to try and threaten it out offensively. I will say, if they try to pivot out to Zapdos, this thing is threatening an Ice Beam.
Zapdos is quite low as well, so a Dark Pulse might actually be enough to clean up this. Ice Beam certainly will. Oh, it certainly doesn't want to take, as even if it doesn't dial skill of.
I will say it very much depends on the set here. Keep in mind, I think the two sets it runs are either Choice Scarf or Z Hypnosis. We'll have to see for ourselves whether what set this Darkrai is running though. As powerful as
So
there we go. It comes
the
Heatran.
Dark Pulse does come in, and even though Heatran is usually a special wall, it still takes quite. Was that Heatran at full?
That Heatran was not quite at full. It took I want to say 12% from Stealth Rock, and Heatran is gone.
Yeah, the
Straight up
Stealth
gone.
Rock plus the two Dark Pulses and sight coming in was just too much for that Heatran. As the Victini now comes in, an interesting choice because Darkrai is usually faster than Victini unless it's scarfed, and would threaten a one shot. But they do switch out into the Lumamola, playing it safe as the V Create comes out. Victini, partially crippled by that, will be forced out as the Superior comes in. The Lumamola flip turns out. Comes back in. Ice Beam. These two Pokemon are faster. Um, that's that Darkrai may very well be scarfed. As you said earlier, based on superior. This 113 Darkrai is faster naturally.
While that is true, something to consider here. Dark Pulse
For the
comes
Dark
out
Pulse,
dealing
not
significant
the Ice
damage.
Beam. As the Superior goes for Leaf Storm, Darkrai does take it, and honestly doesn't care that much. It does take a good chunk, but not enough to overwhelm it. It will be faster than the Superior in this coming turn, and it will be able to kill it. Superior will not to stay alive long enough to cement the kill. Forced out, or will be forced to take.
And so we are left with a very interesting decision here. Things are not quite going as well as Gotham might have hoped, but there is a chance that they might be able to bring this back. We'll have to see whether or not this actually holds water.
The Superior will stay in, taking the time as the Lopunny comes in. Will is Mega Lopunny faster than Darkrai?
Not necessarily. Although I do potentially see it
It is. It is.
surviving.
Unless this Darkrai is scarfed, which it may very well be, as we've only seen it use the same move repeatedly. Lopunny, Mega Lopunny is faster. You're obviously likely going to see
We are still left with a very tough choice though.
a
As the
Lomomola comes in as the Lopunny decides to U-turn out, taking Rocky Helmet damage from the Lomomola as the Victini comes in, actually potentially threatening this Alomomola. Wow. Okay. English is my first language. Alomomola with a Bolt Strike here. Does take rocks damage though, and this Victini is looking not too healthy. Alomomola does go for the protect. Victini does use Bolt Strike.
The question still remains though. We don't. Could this either be Z Celebrate or something else? Zapdos comes out as Landorus comes back in, very much threatening with HD Ice. But the question still remains though. how's this gonna happen? In comes Galarian Slowking very much to threaten. Galarian Slowking very much a good wall here. I do think Jafarion could very well be able to wall this Zapdos out. In comes Future Sight. I do think a combination of Sludge Bomb and Future Sight would be enough to KO the Zapdos. The question remains though is if that is what Gato is able to do. In comes Hurricane for a little bit of extra damage. Slowking choosing to Chilling Reception instead as Aerodactyl comes out.
Control
This is
yourself.
going to be a
Control yourself.
sorry. I will say here, Aerodactyl is one of my favorites.
I could hear it in the tone of your voice.
Of course, I will imagine this will threaten Zapdos here, unless we potentially see
especially with
unless
that
we see a Focus Sash on this.
Well, even if it is, that Zapdos has Future Sight. Zapdos is going to be hit by Future Sight soon, so even if it does live whatever this Aerodactyl. As although we have seen some weird things, this matchup is fairly, at least these two teams seem to be fairly standard and nothing too weird. I expect this to be a Mega Aerodactyl. I'll be very surprised if we saw a non-Mega Aerodactyl in one of these teams. As I said, they are fairly standard.
I will say if Aerodactyl is being brought out now, it could be. I have potentially seen some fringe sets where it's run Focus Sash as well, so it's guaranteed to survive at least one hit. We'll have to see whether or not that is the actual set Draft is running here, as Mega Aerodactyl is significantly more common.
Does go for the Mega. Does Zapdos stay in? Zapdos stays in. The Stone Edge does miss. Zapdos, interestingly, going for the Roost, potentially thinking it can live whatever this Aerodactyl is going to throw at it.
No matter what it thought it could live, it certainly won't be surviving a Stone Edge now, that's for certain.
Mega Aerodactyl, of course, a Pokemon with a very, very, very high speed tier. The fastest unboosted Pokemon in the metagame.
Thunderbolt comes back out. Zapdos is very much free to roost here. However, I would imagine in comes the Jirachi as Slowking goes for Future Sight yet again. I will say, I don't think. There we go. Jirachi going for Wish here. I'm not entirely certain how common that is. Jirachi not quite getting the paralysis here, which is a little unfortunate. And I don't think I see any potential wishes coming out. Jirachi taking the Future Sight here, taking frankly negligible damage.
And damage that is taken
Jirachi's wish comes true.
Damage that is taken is immediately healed by that wish. Darkrai does come out, will force this Jirachi back out. We've seen this Darkrai multiple times now. It's had multiple opportunities to use Z Hypnosis if it has it. I don't think it does. And every time we've seen this Darkrai do something and stay in for more than one turn, it has used the same move multiple times in a row. So it is very likely choice locked. To see exactly how what this Jirachi switches into.
Jirachi going for Protect here as Darkrai goes for Dark Pulse. Is there a potential answer here that we've not seen yet?
Actually going for the Protect, to go for the trying to scout out, maybe see if the Darkrai is predicting switching to something else. But no, the Jirachi will actually stay in, taking a Dark Pulse, taking a considerable amount, going for the Body Slam in return, doing a good chunk to the Darkrai.
I will say if somehow the body slam somehow with Serene Grace added the paralysis, this Dark Eye was as good as gone. Very
Leftovers
fortunate
actually
for
going for the protect. The turn after does get a bit of health regenerated, but it's certainly not enough to live another Dark Pulse. Jirachi will be forced out this coming turn. Unless they decide to just stay in, maybe not comfortable switching out, maybe nothing too comfortably switch into.
Dark Pulse comes out. Jirachi has fainted. Do we have a potential answer here
And
to the
Megalopony.
Dark Ride?
Megalopony is still in the back, and as is the Victini, presumably scarfed. But if this Darkrai is also scarfed, it ain't fast enough. Darkrai is
Both
forced
try
out.
healing.
A good chunk, but not enough to even for half, as the Victini will actually die from the Rocky Helmet damage as the Zapdos does come in, taking rock damage. Does roost through it though.
I would imagine Galarian Slowking here, very much free to Future Sight. There we go. Hurricane
Very
unfortunately
unfortunate.
missing yet again.
Problem with running Hurricane on Zapdos when it's not a rain Zapdos is that you do, although it has oppressive stopping power, that inconsistency with 70% accuracy really does come to bite you sometimes. Looking is confused, but it will just chill reception out, bringing Darkrai back in, likely threatening this Zapdos out.
I would imagine in the snow too, unless I'm wrong. I know it's the case for Sandstorm and Sun. Hurricane's accuracy is actually now 50%.
I believe so, yeah. Interestingly, they may just choose to sacrifice a Zapdos here so that they can bring in either the Victini or the Lopunny in.
Lopunny
does come in, will threaten this Darkrai back out. There are multiple answers for this Lopunny on the opposing side, like the Alomomola. Let's take the close combat, does not really care. Lopunny takes the Rocky Helmet damage. Down. Combat again, just trying to do as much damage as it can on this Alomomola, as it's actually the last Pokemon remaining. As Drifurian will win that final match. I have no idea what team that they belong to. Do you know who belonged to who there?
While that is true, do keep in mind Alomomola is arguably a much safer check.
Battle's end. The battle's over. Drifurian run. I'm asking if you know who owns who. I don't know the servers that the members belong to.
Yes, of course. I have confirmation now after checking earlier. Drifurion representing Pixelmon FR. And with that case, 2-1, I am almost certain that Snorlex is unfortunately out.
That will mean Snorlex is. I don't believe they're going to be able to qualify, unfortunately. But they did put up a very good fight at the end there. Did trying their best. Winning one of the matches as well. So props to them. Showing up today despite the overwhelming odds against them and managing to fight very well. Fortunately, not fight hard enough. That is the end of our 3 matches between these 2 servers. We do have more matches coming up later today. I'm not doing math. About 2.5 hours from now, Poke Cafe versus iPixelmon. If you want to know the exact times for that, come join the Discord server to find the scheduling information. The Discord server is the link for that is on the website. Also on the website, you'll see there is a sponsor section if you wish to support this tournament running it in any way. It goes a long way. Um, Thanks for everyone who showed up today and battled today, as well as the referee who showed up. And as always, thanks to the organizers and the staff behind this, allowing this to function as it does. I do believe that's it for now.
We'll see you guys in about 2 hours as we wait for the match between Poke Cafe and iPixelmon. I've been your commentator Delta,
And I've been your commentator, Alba.
and we'll be signing out for the time being. See you all then.